Ferrari just built the fastest car in Miami, and still lost control of the story. 1 minute 29.310. Fastest lap. Clean execution. Everything working perfectly. But then, out of nowhere, a Red Bull that was struggling all season jumps to second place, just 0.297 behind. In one session. That should not be possible. And here's the part that changes everything. Red Bull didn't beat Ferrari by being faster. They exposed why Ferrari's entire upgrade might be solving the wrong problem. Because what Red Bull unlocked in Miami isn't something you can see. It's something you can't copy. And once you understand that, you'll realize this championship just shifted. Ferrari didn't just arrive in Miami with an upgrade, they arrived with a statement. Weeks of development, a completely reworked package, and one clear objective: take control of the championship from this moment forward. And at first, it looked exactly like that. Leclerc goes out, delivers a 1 minute 29.310, and suddenly Ferrari is on top of the session. Everything feels precise, calm, almost effortless. Like a car that has been perfectly prepared for this exact moment. But here's where things start to feel different. Because that lap shows you something very specific. It shows you the maximum potential of the car, under ideal conditions. Not its limits. Now imagine this like a perfectly tuned instrument. Every string adjusted, every note clean. When played in the right environment, it sounds flawless. That's Ferrari in Miami. The car is working exactly as designed. The new floor generating consistent downforce. The front wing balancing the airflow. And that rear wing, the Macarena 2.0, delivering extra speed where it matters most, especially in the long straights of Sector 2. And when all of that aligns, it looks unbeatable. But here's the detail that changes everything. It only works like that when everything stays aligned. Because that system depends on balance. On airflow stability. On temperature. On clean air. Change one variable, and the entire behavior of the car can shift. Not gradually. Immediately. And that creates a very specific type of performance. High peak, but narrow window. Now here's the uncomfortable question. What happens when Ferrari is no longer operating inside that perfect window? When the tires overheat? When the car sits in dirty air? When the driver has to fight for position instead of controlling the lap? Because none of that was tested in that moment. And this is where the story quietly starts to turn. Because while Ferrari was showing how fast their car can be, Red Bull was discovering something far more important. How their car behaves when things are not perfect. And that difference is exactly where the real gap begins. And this is where Red Bull quietly turns the entire narrative upside down. Because while Ferrari was chasing perfection, Red Bull was fixing chaos. In the first races of the season, the RB22 wasn't just lacking pace. It was unpredictable. The rear would move without warning, the balance would break mid-corner, and Verstappen couldn't lean on the car. Imagine trying to run at full speed on ice. You might have the strength, the talent, the speed, but you never use all of it, because you don't trust the ground beneath you. That was Red Bull. But in Miami, that feeling disappears. Not because of one big, obvious upgrade. Because everything finally started working together. New side pods guiding the airflow more cleanly. A revised floor stabilizing the car at high speed. Subtle aerodynamic changes improving how the air feeds the entire system. Even the way the car uses its energy under the new rules was adjusted. Individually, none of these changes sound revolutionary. Together, they transform the car. And suddenly, Verstappen says something that sounds simple, but changes everything. The car responds. That's not just feedback. That's a turning point. Because when a driver feels that response, they stop holding back. They brake later. They carry more speed. They trust the rear to stay in line. And that trust unlocks performance you can't just design on paper. Now here's the key detail most people missed. This wasn't Red Bull at full performance. This was Red Bull at the beginning of understanding their car again. And even then, they jumped to second place, right behind Ferrari, ahead of teams that had been dominating the season. That kind of jump doesn't come from copying a rear wing. It comes from fixing the foundation. And this is exactly why Red Bull's version of Macarena 2.0 is nothing like Ferrari's. Because Ferrari built something that adds performance when everything is perfect. Red Bull built something that allows performance even when things are not. And that difference is massive. It means Red Bull can keep pushing without breaking the balance. It means every future upgrade will have a stronger impact. And it means something even more dangerous? They are not done yet. Because once stability is solved, performance becomes easier to unlock, not harder. So while Ferrari might already be close to their maximum in Miami, Red Bull is just getting started. And if that's true, then those few tenths between them, they don't show the real gap. They hide what's coming next. And now the reaction across the grid starts to reveal something even more uncomfortable, because this isn't just about two teams anymore. This is about who actually understands the new era of Formula One. Mercedes, the team that dominated the opening races, suddenly drops almost 8/10 off the pace in that same session. That's not a small loss. That's a complete disconnect. Because when a team goes from leading comfortably to struggling to stay in the top positions, it means the rules didn't just slow them down. They exposed them. Now McLaren sits in a strange position. Quick enough to compete, but not fully understood. Even their own drivers admit they still need more time to unlock the car. So suddenly, the grid splits into completely different realities. Ferrari knows exactly what their car can do. Red Bull is discovering what their car is becoming. And everyone else is trying to figure out which direction even works. And this is where pressure starts to build. Because development in Formula One is not just about adding speed. It's about committing to a philosophy. If you believe in your direction, you push harder. You take risks. You evolve faster. But if you're not sure, everything slows down. Decisions become cautious. Upgrades become smaller. Confidence disappears. Now look at Ferrari. Leclerc sounds confident. Focused. Talking about a turning point. The car is doing exactly what they expected. Hamilton feels the improvement, especially in high-speed sections, confirming that the system is working where it should. Everything points in one direction. Clarity. But Red Bull has something different. Not just clarity. Momentum. Because when you fix your biggest weakness, every next step becomes easier. Every upgrade connects better. Every adjustment gives more performance. And Verstappen's tone reflects that shift. Still demanding. Still critical. But no longer fighting the car. Now there's belief. And belief, combined with momentum, is what turns a recovery into dominance. So now connect everything. Ferrari has the strongest snapshot of performance. Red Bull has the strongest trajectory. Mercedes has lost its reference. McLaren is still searching. And the championship suddenly feels unstable, but not random. It's reorganizing. Quietly. Because this is no longer about who brought the best upgrade to Miami. It's about who just unlocked the correct path for the rest of the season. And if Red Bull is already building on a stable foundation, while others are still trying to understand theirs, then what we saw wasn't just a competitive session. It was the moment the entire grid started chasing the wrong answer. And this is where everything finally connects, because the real difference between Ferrari and Red Bull is not what we saw in Miami. It's what happens after Miami. Ferrari built a car that delivers performance now. Immediate results. You can see it on the timing screen, you can measure it in a single lap, you can trust it when everything is under control. But Red Bull built something that evolves. And that changes the entire direction of the championship. Because once a car becomes stable, truly stable, every future upgrade becomes more effective. Not just slightly, dramatically. Now imagine two teams developing over the next races. One is already extracting performance from a system that is close to its peak. The other is adding performance to a system that just started working properly. Which one improves faster? That's the question Miami quietly answered. Because Red Bull didn't arrive at their final version. They arrived at their starting point. And here's where it becomes almost impossible for Ferrari to respond in the same way. If Ferrari wants to match Red Bull's trajectory, they don't just need more speed. They would need to expand the window of their car. Make it less sensitive. More adaptable. More stable when conditions are not perfect. In other words, they would need to rethink how the car behaves. And that is not something you fix in one upgrade. That takes time. Time that Red Bull might have just created for themselves. Now go back to that moment again. Leclerc on top. Perfect lap. Everything working. Verstappen just behind. Not perfect. Still unlocking the car. Still understanding how far he can push it. And only 0.297 between them. That number means something completely different now. It's not a gap of dominance. It's a gap of timing. Ferrari is already operating at a very high level. Red Bull is accelerating toward it. And in Formula One, the most dangerous position is not leading. It's chasing, with momentum. Because the team that is still discovering performance doesn't plateau. It grows. Faster with every race. So when people talk about the insane difference between Ferrari's upgrade and Red Bull's Macarena 2.0, this is the real answer. Ferrari built speed into a component. Red Bull built speed into the behavior of the entire car. And behavior is not something you copy by looking at it. You have to understand it. You have to build around it. You have to live inside that philosophy. And that's why this difference is so important. Because one approach gives you results. The other gives you control over how results are created. And in a long championship, that always wins. So now the final question becomes unavoidable. If Red Bull has just unlocked that level of understanding, how long before that small gap disappears completely and turns into something nobody else can catch?